My family cut me off after I hurt my brother, but now they've suddenly forgiven me 5 years later and want to reconnect, and I'm not sure I want them back because my life has gotten so much better without them. So my, 25 male, family completely cut ties with me at the end of 2015. Things had been tense for a while leading up to that, but the breaking point came when I went to my parents' house for Christmas. One night, I drank way too much and got into a heated argument with my younger brother. The argument spiraled out of control and turned physical. I was 19 at the time, and he was only 15. Unfortunately, he got the worst of it. That night changed everything. It wasn't just the fight itself, but the damage it did to my relationship with my family. After that, they pretty much shut me out completely. Without going into massive detail, he had said something which struck a nerve. I won't say what because it's quite personal, and not really relevant here, and I ended up injuring him quite badly. There was a question of potentially involving the police, but nothing ever happened in regards to that. In the end they all just told me they wanted nothing to do with me anymore. Which is fair enough. I was completely in the wrong and they were absolutely right to want to cut me off. I'm not complaining about that in the slightest. I had already moved out by that stage, so it wasn't a case of kicking me out, it was more just telling me to never come back. Again, I can't blame them for this at all, and would be surprised if you could either. This post isn't about me complaining about being cut off or pretending that I didn't deserve it, because I did, and I'm not trying to play the victim here. I genuinely regret what I did and have spent time trying to self-improve in the wake of it. It was quite difficult for me to come to terms with this for the first year or so afterwards. The only person in my family I had any contact with was my mom. We never really spoke in depth, just small updates, wishing each other happy birthday and things like that. Honestly though, after that first year, things have gotten so much better for me. I stopped drinking, which was the root of a lot of my problems. I got my head down and ended up doing very well at university. I've now got a job that I love, and I've been with my girlfriend for the best part of 4 years, and things are absolutely great. To be brutally honest, I don't miss my family one bit. My relationship with them hadn't been great for a while before the fight, and as far as I was concerned I didn't miss them and they didn't miss me, and being on a non-contact basis with all of them apart from occasional contact with my mom was for the better. However, over the last few months, my mom began messaging me much more frequently, and asking more personal questions about my life, my work, my relationship, etc. I thought it was just boredom on her part, but she maintained it for a while, and began to introduce the idea of me coming back to visit her at some point, which I always shrugged. She started to persist with it, and then yesterday it all came to a head when she added me to a WhatsApp group chat with the rest of the family. I was then told how they had all come to a family decision that 5 years was enough, that my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me for what happened and that they wanted me to come over at some point to catch up on lost time. These are all quotes from what they sent me. I didn't say much, I just said I wanted time to think. I'm quite torn on this now. Part of me feels like I'm obliged to go along with it. They cut contact with me because of my own actions, and if my brother's forgiven me and wants to re-establish contact with me then it's my duty to do so. On the other hand, I feel like since contact was cut my life improved a lot. My relationship with them had been on a downward slope for a fair bit of time beforehand, and I just haven't found myself missing any of it. That's why I'm asking for advice. Would you say that I'm obliged to go and re-establish contact because it was my fault that contact was cut, or do you think it would be acceptable for me not to do so? Update 4 days later. I wasn't initially planning on doing an update for that post, but the amount of responses I got from it were absolutely unprecedented, so I decided it was right of me to do one. I'll start off by saying that soon after that post was written I phoned my brother. We talked for a few minutes about how things were going, and then I apologized to him for what happened back in 2015. He didn't specifically say he forgave me, but he was amicable and said that he appreciated me doing it. I'm glad I did it. I know 5.5 years is a long time to have gone without doing it, but that was the first vocal conversation I'd had with him since the family cut contact. He told me that the whole incident hadn't left him with any lasting mental or physical damage, and while I have no way of knowing whether that's completely true, I was glad to hear it. I don't want to make it about myself, but it did also feel like a bit of a weight lifted off my shoulders. In terms of the actual resumption of contact, it won't be happening for now. After a few days of talking to the family as a collective in the group chat, which I have now left, as well as some individual conversations with different members, I told them that I was happy to increase contact with them through messaging, but that as things stand I didn't think resuming face-to-face contact would be right, and that I wasn't going to do it. As I stated in the initial post, I was already having severe doubts about it, and the conversations I had with them pretty much made my mind up for me. I'll list a few examples of it here. 1. Much of the discussion I had with family was done through a group chat in which I was added to by my mom. This group chat also contained my dad, and my 2 brothers. The group chat was titled Reunion, so it was pretty obvious what their intentions were. 2. The initial language used by them when I was added bothered me. I gave some examples of it in the original post, things like my mum saying my brother had found it in his heart to forgive me and them coming to a family decision that 5 years was enough. It made it seem like there was no chance of it being a normal family relationship at all, and that I would always be indebted and subservient to them in some form for that. As I said, I had no issue with being cut off and felt they were pretty justified in doing so, but that doesn't mean I would be prepared to come back and be in a constant state of owing one, and likely being made to feel pressured to do things for them because they were oh so kind to find it in their hearts to let me back. 3. This sort of language continued throughout me being in that group chat. Some more examples were being told that I had lots of work to do if we wanted a normal relationship, noticed that they didn't say we, and also was compared to the prodigal son multiple times by my, very religious, parents, which just made me think they were doing it for their own spiritual reasons rather than actually being interested in having me back as part of the family. The final nail in the coffin was that when I specifically expressed doubts about it, my dad said, after all you did to us as a family, we've decided to let you back in, and then pretty much went on to tell me that I should be biting their hands off for the chance to make amends, and that I was ungrateful for not doing so. I told them I was backing out of it pretty soon after that. A few of the replies to my original post asked if any of them needed an organ. I initially brushed this off as a joke, but after some of the conversations I had, I now genuinely think it's possible that that's true. My girlfriend is also a big reason why I was initially having doubts, and a couple of things that were said by my dad completely reinforced these. I 100% know that he would dislike her. Not through any fault of her own, but mainly because he has some very old-fashioned views on women, and he's also quite racist. She is only half white, and when I was younger my dad made it pretty clear that he didn't want me to date outside of my race. In the group chat, he described her as my exotic girlfriend and made a couple of very stereotypical assumptions on her based on her race, which made it pretty clear to me that he still found it wrong and abnormal of me to be with a girl who isn't completely white. If I resumed a somewhat normal father-son relationship with him, I'm almost certain that he'd try to interfere in some way, and would at the very least encourage me to end things with her. It's not like I've only been seeing her for a month either. We've been together for almost 4 years and have discussed marriage, so she absolutely takes priority over the family. Those are the main reasons behind me choosing not to go down the route of face-to-face contact with the family. There are a few other things too, such as the fact that they seemed awfully interested in grandchildren who didn't even exist, and also that I suspected that it was all my mom's doing and that the rest of the family weren't that interested. I'm fairly sure she was feeding the others lines. My 14-year-old brother was typing an awful lot like my 45-year-old mom, let's put it that way. With all these factors combined with my initial doubts about it made my mind up that I wasn't going to resume face-to-face contact. I messaged them telling them that while I did appreciate them trying to get me to do so, I just had too many doubts about it to go and start meeting with them face-to-face or going to their house. I did say that they all had my number now, and were free to text me at any point if they wanted to talk, and then left the group chat. I know they've all read it, because they've all been online since I sent it, but I haven't had a single message from any of them. To be honest, I'm not entirely sure if I ever will. And yet, I can't really say I feel that sad about it. I'm glad I've apologized to my brother, and if that's the end of all contact with them then so be it, it is what it is. My mum was contacting me every day in the months leading up to her deciding I should start seeing the family again. Now it's beginning to seem to me that she was doing so because she wanted me to return to them on my hands and knees, groveling and begging for forgiveness. Things certainly began to turn a bit sour when it became clear that I wasn't going to do that. Perhaps she sees it as the final betrayal, and wants nothing more to do with me now. At the end of the day, I'm never going to pretend that they were for a second wrong for cutting contact with me. They did it to protect their 15-year-old son, and I completely understand it. Ultimately though, I grew up, ended my addiction and built a life for myself off the back of it without them involved in my life. It's very likely that they still have this image of the 19-year-old who turned completely white when he was told they wanted nothing more to do with him, but that really isn't me anymore. When they initially kicked me out, I felt like I needed them even though we didn't have the greatest relationship. 5 years on from that, I certainly don't think I do anymore. I apologize to anyone who read the initial post and wanted me to go and see them in person again, but this is just how things have turned out. Once again, thank you to everyone for offering support and advice, and I hope that anyone reading this who has their own issues with family and estrangement is able to navigate them, and build a relationship back if they so wish.